Welcome into OutKick the show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Tuesdays wherever across this great land or this great world you may find yourself. I remain the most reasonable man on the internet, here to solve all of the world's problems in one fell swoop, or at least this particular half-hour segment of the day that you get me. I have spent a lot of time thinking about things because what I do is solve problems. There's lots of people out there who make arguments, who get angry. I look at flaws and I solve them. That's what I do, all right? I am going to solve the NFL's issues right now with overtime in the playoffs and also with instant replay. Let's begin with instant replay. There were two flagrantly wrong calls in the AFC and the NFC championship game that should have never been made. Tom Brady was not roughed, right? During the game against the Chiefs, there was no roughing the passer penalty. Should not have been a 15-yard penalty that was marched off. You could easily see the replay, tell that Tom Brady and his helmet was not contacted. There was no illegal contact. There was no roughing the passer. There was no unnecessary roughness. None of that should have ever been called, okay? We know that because we saw it on replay. Similarly, that was a crime of over-refereeing. Similarly, we had a crime, and I use the term crime in the context of the game, not an actual crime. Similarly, we had an error applied when a flag was not thrown in the Saints game against the Rams, and it should have been flagged, right? So what you really have is an issue where you are missing penalties sometimes and over-penalizing in others, i.e. officials are making errors. So how could you solve this? Here's my easy solution for instant replay review in the NFL. All right, I want you to follow along and then I'll answer any of your questions. First of all, you should only be able to challenge if a penalty is 15 yards or more. If a penalty is 5 yards or even 10 yards, by and large, it does not impact the game itself in such a substantial way that it is worth throwing the flag for, okay? The penalty needs to be for 15 or more yards in theory. That would mean that it would bring in all like quarterback hits. It would bring into play unnecessary roughness. It would bring into all those plays, and it would bring into play the penalty for pass interference, launching and leading with the helmet, all of those things, okay? You should not be able to challenge everything. That is one solution, okay? I don't think you should be able to challenge a 5-yard out or something like that. I think that defensive holding calls, this should be rectified outside of instant replay. Defensive holding calls should not be automatic first downs. If it's 3rd and 14 and somebody holds and you get a 5-yard penalty, it shouldn't be an automatic first down. It should be like an offsides. A lot of questions about defensive holding. That should be a 5-yard penalty. If the 5-yard penalty happens to give you a first down, like occurs sometimes when guys jump offside or when there's a false start, those kind of things, that's fine. But by and large, they should not be impacted there, okay? So that is one situation. The other one is, to me, something really simple. This should not, the NFL needs to go back and recalibrate the way that they break down. No, it wouldn't cause everyone to hold. Shut up. I hate stupid people in the comments, all right? I'm going to start blocking you if I look over and I see a stupid comment, all right? I said that at the start of the year. Don't make stupid comments. Everybody is not going to hold, just like everybody's not going to jump off sides, because a 5-yard penalty is a significant penalty, okay? If you said, like, if it used to be a 15-yard penalty to jump off sides and then it got taken to a 5-yard penalty, you'd be like, oh, everybody's going to jump off sides now. No, they're not. They're going to try to play the game in a way that they don't get penalized, all right? That is the assumption that you are working under, is that players are trying to avoid being penalized. Also, holding for 5 yards would just create another down. So all you're doing is hurting your team's situation. numbnuts. If it's 3rd and 14 and you hold, then you make it 3rd and 9. If you hold again, then you make it 3rd and 4. If they throw it in your direction while you are holding, then it is pass interference. So this idea, some of you are just idiots, all right? So I'm going to stop responding to idiots who were making stupid arguments, all right? 15-yard penalties required to challenge. Here's the thing. They need to stop making the NFL official go look into a monitor, okay? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever to go look in a monitor. What they should do is they should hire Mike Pereira or they should hire Dean Blandino, whoever the best people are at reviewing in real time the situation, and they should immediately make the decision while watching it in New York. All right? This is easy to see. People are like, oh, it's going to add so much time to the game. Anybody could immediately look at that penalty against the Saints and see that it was pass interference. It would have taken 30 seconds to make that call. Anybody could immediately look. Took no time at all. Took no time at all to make a decision when it came to whether or not Tom Brady was contacted in the head. Those are two 15-yard penalties that would immediately either have been applied, spotted the foul in the context of the personal foul in the pass interference, or taken away in the context of the Brady hit, all right? Here's how you fix it. You put it within the context of instant replay review, and coaches have the right to challenge. When they challenge, you send it immediately to New York, and you go review it, and you decide whether or not the penalty stands. I think you will have an equal number of penalties being challenged that were called, and penalties that were not, all right? It's an easy situation. If it's a gray area, you leave the call on the field. I only want calls that are demonstrably wrong and should not have been made, or were demonstrably wrong and were not made to be able to do. Takes no time at all. So everybody out there arguing about this really needs to think about it, all right? You would get, within the context of your challenge, maybe you add one more challenge to each half. If you are correct on the challenge, then you get another challenge, potentially to challenge an officiating decision, okay? If you are wrong, you lose your right to challenge for the rest of that half. So why would that be significant? It would mean that coaches would keep in their back pocket their challenges so that they were able to wait until a significant play happened to actually challenge the play, right? So if, for instance, you've got a 3-yard out and you believe your receiver was interfered with, you wouldn't throw the flag then probably, because you would wait to see whether a more significant penalty might arise. Just as in the case now, all reviews inside of 2 minutes would be handled by the NFL. The NFL would continue to review all scoring plays and all turnovers. This is basic, this is simple, this is easy to apply. You do it within the context of the instant replay system that already exists. Furthermore, if you are concerned about timing, there's no reason for the kabuki theater charade of an NFL official walking over and looking into a monitor at the field. All that needs to happen is you have the best instant replay officials that money can buy, the single most talented guys in New York watching every play, and they immediately go to them, and then they make the call as to what the appropriate call is. They got an earpiece in. All they have to do is then walk out and announce what New York has told them. Perfect. Makes absolutely no sense to do anything otherwise. This is the solution. This solves it. There's no more issues going forward. Any questions about this? Any questions about this in general? About my plan? Again, my plan is simple. Add one more challenge for each half that would exist to challenge if there were, in fact, some major errors made in officiating. And you only are allowed to challenge when it's 15 yards plus. This would limit, in theory, or I'm open to allowing any play to be challenged, but I think the practicality of it would be that most coaches would only challenge officiating calls when there was a substantial amount of yardage in play. This is every single game. Every single game, this would be in play. Here's what I think it would do. I think it would limit unnecessary calls because officials would be thinking, oh, I'm only going to call it if I see a certainty. But it would also ensure that if the officials actually blow a call, you can come back and you would be able to solve it, right? College officials don't look into the headset monitor. That is correct. It makes no sense to give the charade of needing a guy to walk over and look into the monitor there. Just go right back to New York, buzz them, and let it go on. All right, that is my solution. No, I don't want, no. Somebody says, why does there have to be a challenge? Because I don't like the system in play now. College football reviews way too many plays. And sometimes they don't review plays that they should be reviewing. I want the onus on the coach to have to challenge. It makes way more sense. NFL is more efficient in that respect. College, they buzz way too often and review plays that are far from actually being that significant in the landscape of the game. I want coaches to challenge because I think the college system is sometimes flawed there. I watch college football all day on Saturday, and there are far too many plays that are questionable that never get looked at. So I want the coaches to have the onus on them. Now, you review every scoring play automatically. You review every turnover automatically. I don't think that changes. And keep in mind, most of the time, there aren't very many challenges during the course of an NFL game. So I think this could make a lot of sense if it is implemented. It is perfect. I think it's a perfect system that would make the game less likely to have major issues in judgment, because that's what these are. Issues in judgment, errors in judgment actually arrive. All right, my solution in overtime. I would leave NFL overtime rules as they are now for the regular season. Regular season NFL overtime rules, if you're not familiar with them, you flip the coin. If you score a touchdown, the team that gets the ball first, the game is over. If you kick a field goal, the game continues. Okay? I would leave that rule in place. In overtime in the playoffs, if it goes to overtime, I would change the rule to both teams are guaranteed a possession. If it goes to overtime in the postseason, you play 15 minutes. You play another full quarter, okay? One more 15-minute quarter. That guarantees both teams would get the ball. And if one team is capable of doing a 15-minute drive, then you don't deserve to get the football back, all right? Both teams get the ball. And once both teams have had the ball in 15 minutes, if one team has got the lead, they can try to run out the clock just like they do in regular football now. If the game still ends in a tie after 15 minutes, then you can go to sudden death, first score wins, whatever arguments you want to have. Our injury guy needs to shut the fuck up, all right? You are playing for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. Every single snap is a risk of injury. I think there would actually be less risk of injury in a situation like this, because very often what would happen is one team would get the advantage and they would try to run out the clock. That's what would happen. So 15 minutes. Don't be somebody's going to get injured guy. These guys make millions of dollars. When you get that close to the Super Bowl, I think that as a viewer and also as a member of a team, it sucks to not have your stud quarterback get to go on the field. And I would feel this way even if it was Patrick Mahomes who had gone down the field and scored first. I would feel like the Patriots got cheated not to get Tom Brady on the field there as well. Okay? That is what I think you should make the rule in the postseason when you're playing for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. All right? I also think this would lead to more fairness than exists now when if you win the coin toss, there is a high probability of you winning the game. And I don't think that should be in play at all. So for people out there who say, well, the defense should make a stop, get the defense off the field, do you argue the same thing in baseball? When a game goes into extra innings, do you argue, well, the second team shouldn't get to bat when the first team scores, they were on defense. They had a chance to stop the offense, and they couldn't do it. So now the defense gets screwed. What about in a situation where the team sides aren't even? The Chiefs are much better on offense than they are on defense. I think if the Chiefs had won that coin flip, they would have gone down and scored on the Patriots defense because they had scored 31 points in the second half, including 24 in the fourth quarter. And the Patriot defense was starting to fall apart. So why should the coin flip determine this? Tom Brady has won 3 games in overtime and the Super Bowl. In all 3 games, the other team's offense never got to get on the field because they won the toss and went down and scored. That's great. Tom Brady's an outstanding quarterback. But why is that remotely fair? You should have to, in my opinion, allow both quarterbacks to come out onto the field and give them a chance to both get opportunities to score. All right, final thought for the day, okay? Final thought for the day. Have you guys paid attention to the Kentucky high school controversy? The Kentucky high school controversy at the Lincoln Memorial is one of the most absurd controversies I have ever seen in my entire life. Okay? It is absurd on pretty much all faces. But let me start here. I have spent many years in Washington, D.C. I went to college there. We would go to the Lincoln Memorial and play football every single Sunday right by the Lincoln Memorial fields when I was in college. I have been to the Lincoln Memorial a ton of times. We used to all jog around the mall back when I was a jogger before I realized that jogging is the worst way to get exercise in the entire world. And when you actually spend any time around the Lincoln Memorial, what you learn is there's always somebody protesting something there. Really, this is the case everywhere in Washington, D.C. If you go to the White House, there's always somebody protesting something. If you go to the Capitol, there's always somebody protesting something. If you go to the Lincoln Memorial, there's always somebody protesting something. There are people who are perpetually aggrieved that are always standing around outside looking for audiences to protest. The fact that a bunch of high school kids meeting their chaperones on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial to drive back to college, to their high school, can turn into a viral internet meme and video is, to me, really very troubling for where we are as a society, particularly when that video is edited and doesn't reflect anything that actually happened at the Lincoln Memorial within the larger context. What happened was these kids who were majority white were wearing Make America Great Again hats. Okay? They went to a rally in Washington, D.C., and they supported the current president of the United States. You may not like Donald Trump. You may hate him. You may think he's making a lot of really bad decisions. There is nothing wrong with high school kids supporting the current president of the United States when they go to Washington, D.C. to engage in a political march. This is like being upset at somebody for going to a sporting event and wearing the hat of the team that they are going to support. Somehow, people have gotten triggered by the fact that Donald Trump has supporters, and they get even more triggered when those supporters are young white men. All right, this is the truth. I think what happened was these young white kids in Make America Great Again hats represented an opportunity for left-wing activists to try to portray them as evil. I think what's scary is the number of people on social media who are so convinced that Donald Trump is the worst human being since Hitler that they were so willing to believe the worst things about these kids based on a 30-second viral video. Why does this matter? Because at some point in time, virtually everybody watching this video either has been a teenager or will raise a teenager themselves. If we are going to allow teenage kids to be doxxed for standing in a public place while wearing hats by videos which are not representative in any way of what they were actually doing or saying. If anything, these kids were the victims of adults who tried to use them as pawns to further service their own political motivations. If we are going to allow this to become a major news story, the likes of which the New York Times, the Washington Post, and countless other, CNN, countless other major news organizations are going to cover, there are a couple of things that I think are important here. One, news media has to decide, is this worthy of being a story? It used to be that reasonably intelligent people would look at all of the world of stories and they would say, you know what? Let's make a decision about whether this is really newsworthy. Is a group of high school kids waiting for their chaperone at the Lincoln Memorial engaging with a protester in any way worthy of being considered a major national news story? Was any crime committed? No. Was any major wrongdoing included in the video? No. Was there in any way a famous person involved in this story at all? No. Were the majority of the people in this story even adults? These are questions that a reasonably competent journalistic mind should be asking before they decide, let's put the full resources of the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN and all these other news organizations behind a story such as this. One of the problems with social media, and there are many, is, as you can now tell, this story went viral because of an account in Brazil which is pretending to be a California teacher and has been tweeting over 100 times a day far left-wing opinions. When this video was shared, it was then artificially magnified and spread throughout the entire social media arena until people started to become aware of it, and then it became a viral sensation. It used to be that adults at the New York Times or the Washington Post or CNN would look at a news story and say, this is not worthy of our institution covering. It now has become the case that if a story trends, they use its popularity on Twitter as default evidence that it's something they should be covering. Why does that matter? One, it might not be worthy of something that they should cover. Two, Twitter is being manipulated so that stories that otherwise, and Facebook too, would never actually be big stories, become big stories. I'll give you an example. When I went on and said I loved the First Amendment and boobs, I went in and I searched my own name. My own name was showing up hundreds of times a minute from all of these different accounts, all saying the exact same thing. They weren't real accounts. All of them were using my name to ratchet up the popularity in the immediate aftermath of my appearance on CNN so that I could be attacked as a left-wing Trump activist. You can go back and look at how quickly that surged to the top of the viral news headlines. Many people go onto Twitter and just look at the top trending topics. Go search names sometimes. You will be blown away by how many times bots will be repeating the same thing over and over and over again in an effort to drive up the amount of interest that is in existence for these stories. In other words, people like to pretend social media is a real reflection of the world. I have been arguing for a long time it is an artificial funhouse mirror, the equivalent of trying to figure out whether you need to go on a diet or not by standing in front of one of those mirrors that makes you either too tall, too skinny, too fat, or too wide, whatever it is. They are driven mad by bots. okay? But then real humans jump in as well, and all I would say about this is, why does no one think, are high school students reacting on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial a major issue that our nation needs to be covering? These stupid professional protesters have existed for generations. They show up at places in the public and try to draw attention to themselves. That's their goal and their cause. Why suddenly are we treating them as more legitimate? And why, and this is a big issue, why are there so many people out there willing to believe the absolute worst of someone else? The problem with social media is it allows no nuance. There's nobody out there who says, well, you know, on the one hand, this happened, but on the other hand, this happened. You're either the best or the worst. You're either a saint or a sinner. And the worst part about this is everybody has already made up their minds the moment they see what you look like. It used to be that racism was about seeing someone based on the color of their skin and treating them differently because they were black or because they were a woman. In the 21st century, in a social media era, we have moved into white men are evil. There's no way imaginable that any other group of people standing in hats on the steps at the Lincoln Memorial waiting for their school bus would have ever been immediately labeled as awful human beings. Think about this for a minute. If that entire group of people had been 2-3 years ago and they had been Barack Obama supporters and they had been black and they had been wearing blue Obama hats, would anybody out there have argued, oh my God, look at how these kids responded to this Native American drummer? If they had been women in vagina hats coming back from the Women's March, would anyone have said, oh my God, look at how these women in the vagina hats responded to this guy playing a drum? You know what would have happened? The guy playing the drum wouldn't have walked over to them. They wouldn't have been taunting teenagers. They wouldn't have been beating a drum right in that kid's face. They are professional protesters. They edited this video. They tried to make these kids look bad. And there were way too many dumb and gullible people in America who immediately wanted to assume the worst about these kids because they were teenagers and they were in Make America Great Again hats. If you don't like Donald Trump, that's fine. But being upset because a bunch of high school kids decide to go to a Lincoln Memorial and wear hats representing the current president of the United States is absurd. Again, it's the equivalent of being upset because somebody goes to a Washington Redskins game wearing a Washington Redskins jersey or a Washington Redskins hat. There needs to be more reasonableness in the world, not more stupidity. Unfortunately, I'm becoming increasingly convinced that social media is making everyone dumber, more tribal, more identity politics driven, and less intelligent, less reasoning, less capable of comprehending and understanding nuance. Those kids did nothing wrong, and everyone who tried to out them, everyone who tried to mob them, everyone who tried to ridicule them and did all of those things should be 100 billion% ashamed of themselves. My name is Clay Travis. This is OutKick the show. I do this every afternoon. I encourage all of you to share the show if you enjoy it. I'll be on live tomorrow, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, and I will be live in about 45 minutes on television, breaking down the world of college basketball, the NBA, and the upcoming Super Bowl on Lock It In. 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central, 2:30 Mountain, 1:30 Pacific. My name is Clay Travis. This has been OutKick the show. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. And I'm telling you all, seriously, think before you retweet. Think before you get outraged. Before you grab your pearls and fall on your fainting couch, ask yourself this: is this really something that I should care about as a fully functional and reasonably intelligent adult? If the answer is no, spend your time elsewhere, such as hanging out with me. Love you guys. Kisses. See y'all. Thank you, Facebook. See y'all.